Okay, so the next company is Alzecure. With me I have Martin Jönsson, the CEO. Welcome.
Thank you.
So maybe can you start to introduce the company a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Alzecure Pharma, we are focusing on Alzheimer's disease and pain, areas of huge unmet medical need. And in 2022, we have had a very successful year with progress in all our different programs, in our 2 Alzheimer's projects and our 2 pain projects. And now we are heading into 2023 and are about to do a proposed rights issue, which we already have guaranteed to 80% without no cost to the participants.
Good. Okay, so maybe can you develop a bit on kind of your business strategy a bit? I mean, you're a pre-revenue biotech company, but what's your strategy in terms of out-licensing, for example?
So our business model is that we are a research and development company, and we will take our projects as the strategy is now until the longest into phase 2. And then to partner or out-license, but we're also open to out-license even earlier than that.
Okay. And you're active within the field of Alzheimer's disease.
Yes.
And we had some big news in the area of disease modification. Positive data with lecanemab, and then a competing compound from Roche did not succeed. And when it comes to your Alzecure project, can you maybe just comment a bit on, are there any implications you can draw any conclusions from these trials when it comes to your own drug candidate?
So the progress that has been in the field with the data that has come out from lecanemab and actually also earlier on from donanemab is validating the project the model we are having from Alzstatin, that if you make sure that you don't get amyloid load, then you aren't negatively impacting the cognition. And I feel that the data that has come out has really verified the amyloid hypothesis. And now we also see interesting things happening with new antibodies coming in. Eli Lilly are going with their second antibody directly into phase 3 with a very interesting primary endpoint where it's only about amyloid clearance. And since it's a phase 3 primary endpoint, that must mean that they have had very positive discussions with FDA to have this specific endpoint. So that, I would say, is a breakthrough for the field.
Okay, so I mean the correlation between a clinical effect and amyloid beta reduction. You mean that it's validated from a regulatory perspective?
I can't imagine that Lilly would go for this primary endpoint if it wasn't discussed with the FDA. So yes, that's how I see it.
Okay.
And since we are focusing on making sure that you don't build up amyloid load in the brain with Alzstatin, focusing on minimizing the production of A-beta 42, so the toxic fragments aren't being created, breaking down the brain. This is very positive for us, because then if we go into phase 1 and show that we really can impact this is great for us. And for Alzstatin, we are looking forward to going into a clinical trial, and we don't see that would be too expensive for us to do. So so
but
it's very positive for that project.
Yeah, and maybe in an easy way, can you describe how Alzstatin differs from the antibodies in mechanism of action?
Absolutely. So the antibodies, their indication is mild Alzheimer's disease, and they go in and clear the toxic fragments, including plaque, and remove them. But when you have mild Alzheimer's disease, the brain is broken down by 20 to 30%, so the brain is really damaged. What we are having with Alzstatin instead is that these toxic fragments are built up by A-beta 42, and Alzstatin is reducing the production of A-beta 42 to make sure that you don't produce these toxic fragments. So with Alzstatin, we want to make sure that we have a preventive treatment. Then we also see the opportunity to use Alzstatin in combination with antibodies. So if you go in and clear the toxic plaque, then you can have maintenance treatment with Alzstatin.
So it's more preventive than...
It's preventive.
So earlier than the antibodies.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the kind of the clinical, how you design a clinical trial to show this preventive effect, I mean, what are the challenges you would say compared to maybe the antibodies that have maybe 18 months or so? Would it have to be longer, for example, in a preventive setting, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there are challenges. What we want to make sure is that we choose the patients who are in risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, and to do that we will aim to use genetics as well as also biomarkers to go in and see which patients already are producing high loads of these toxic plaques. But as you are stating, to really see an effect on cognition would be a very, very long how should I say, trial. But if we can show that we are really bringing down the amyloid load with alstatin, then we think that that could be an endpoint which can in the end give an approval. And both FDA and EMA has already in 2018 gone out and said that there are guidelines that if you can show it on a biomarker, which is well validated, then you can also get an approval.
Okay. So an early, maybe an accelerated approval could be more on a biomarker level, and then you would maybe have to do like a longer trial to show the clinical effect.
Absolutely.
And I mean, could it be similar to, for example, I mean, BioArctic, they have the AHEAD study, which is in the asymptomatic stage. Could we look at those kind of trials? Is that something what we should expect with Alzecure?
Yes, it could, but I think potentially we would go in even earlier. But that is too early to really say, because what we want to do as well is really also to have a meeting with FDA, a pre-IND and an IND with regard to those trials.
Okay, good. And if you jump a bit to ACD 856, the more symptomatic treatment, I mean, compared to alstatin and antibodies, where in the treatment paradigm would it be used?
Yeah, so NeuroRestore ACD856, which we had positive readout on phase 1 and now actually are going into becoming phase 2 ready. It is going into the patients who have shown cognitive problems or a deficit. So that could be a combination treatment with the antibodies. And NeuroRestore should improve memory and learning capabilities in the Alzheimer's patient, but also other patients who have cognitive deficiencies.
And compared to there are, I mean, a few treatments available today for Alzheimer's patients. Would it be a replacement or on top of those, or?
I would say it would be in top in combination, and we have done trials where we have looked at the combinations, and since they are going on different mechanisms, if you take donepezil, that has another mechanism. What we are doing with our compound is that we are increasing the neurotrophic signaling of BDNF and NGF, which are crucial for cell health and also learning and memory capabilities. So it will be a combination.
But you have still shown, or in the preclinical stage, you have shown the possibility that this is also disease modifying to some extent.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, maybe start off to expand a bit on that.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yeah, for us it means a lot. So what we have done initially is we have looked at the symptomatics that we in pre-symptomatic models can show improved learning and memory capabilities. Now we have also shown that NeuroRestore is also improving the health of the cells. It's also improving mitochondrial activity with up to 25-50%, and also so this is huge. So if we also not only can be symptomatic treatment but also disease modifying, it's great. And here it's also ASI, they are having a track APAM, where they also have shown that potential disease-modifying abilities. So this would go on the same concept, but adding on, we also have the BDNF signaling, improving memory and learning capabilities. So we have something extra.
Okay, so that would mean that potentially there could be some sort of preventive treatment, some sort of early treatment that can alter like slow it down, and then even further ahead, you would have ACD856 that could slow it in later stage patients, or so potentially could be a broad spectra of disease modifying.
Exactly, and really also to enhance memory and learning capabilities. In our preclinical models, we have shown that old individuals get the same learning and memory capabilities as the young. So we really enhance it. So that's really cool.
And I know that you're still in discussions on kind of the clinical steps ahead, but I mean, compared to Alzecure and maybe compared to disease modifying, I mean, how would the next clinical trial look like? And would it differ, for example, if you want to show a disease modifying effect, or how could that look like?
Yeah, I mean, what we are doing now, this disease modifying data, we got them this summer, and now we are really going through them. And now we are discussing with expert and external partners on what it means, but also on potential trials. Where we are for the moment, I mean, I think the next trial would primarily be for the showing the symptomatic. But of course, if we can show the disease-modifying benefits as well, that would be great. And we have very, very interesting data that we will present next week on CETAD. We are presenting both on NeuroRestore and also on Alzstatin. And some of this data, I think, really will make people think what NeuroRestore potentially can do.
Okay, so maybe the disease modification could be some sort of add-on at a later stage.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. And maybe I have a few minutes left, so maybe we should talk about your pain project also. Maybe if you can start to describe 440 a bit and its characteristics, what type of indications on.
Absolutely. So painless ACD440 against neuropathic pain. There we have a TRPV1 antagonist, and we have this project now in phase 2, phase 2A study, where we are treating patients with peripheral neuropathic pain. And peripheral neuropathic pain is a very, very big market. Neuropathic pain is the individually biggest pain market. So that trial should have a readout early next year. So we should have top-line results latest communicated next summer. And if we already have shown effects in nociceptic pain, we have preclinical models from neuropathic pain. If we now also can show it in this 2A study, that can mean a lot, and we truly have interest from external parties.
But it's quite a small trial.
Yes.
It's a crossover design, but and pain is typically a tricky area.
It is.
But can you maybe just expand a bit on kind of how did you decide on this relatively small, cheap design? What made you convinced enough to have this design?
Because the results we had in the previous clinical study was so strong, so we didn't need a big patient population. So therefore we have went with 14 patients and crossover design, and then really be able to identify the patients in a good way. And we could have gone, based on the data we already have, we could have done a much smaller trial actually.
And what would be the next step after that? Would it be like a larger phase 2B trial? Or?
Absolutely, and then also choosing exacting indications and so on. So we are working a lot with regard to indications, and we think we have found some very interesting indication that could move the drug forward in a really interesting way.
And if I remember correctly, in your report you mentioned that with the new funding that you will take in, you hope to at least out-license one project, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so can you maybe expand a bit on what, in terms of time frame, when would that be? I mean, is it a year or 1.5 year, or like?
It can be everything from very soon to.
But hopefully with an additional.
Yeah, that we really hope. So what we are doing with this fund as well is, to some extent, also building a war chest with regard to negotiations. But of course, we're also taking in the money to drive our other projects forward. But of course, out-licensing is an important thing for us. And if we can do that, we really validate the company. And since we have so many interesting projects, we will also be able to finance the other projects in a really interesting way.
Yeah, yeah, but I was surprised by the confidence that you hope to out-license with this additional cash. I mean, that from an investor perspective, it's really interesting. But you mentioned in the beginning that this rights issue that's ongoing or should start, that it was a lot of interest from the management and board, for example. That maybe you can describe the dynamics a bit, and why was there so much in-house interest, I guess, to kind of reduce the costs?
First of all, I would say, and we are very grateful for our main shareholders in the company who are really backing this, how should I say, right issues. And the right issue is already guaranteed to over 80% without paying any extra cost or so. And I feel that our current owners really feel that we have been able to show that we can deliver, and therefore they are very confident in us. And then also the board and also the leadership team is really investing. I have committed 1 million for the rights issue.
That's quite a lot. But that also means that with this funding, you mentioned the partnering, but also in terms of catalysts that this funding will that you can get to with this funding, that will at least be the phase 2 readout in the summer. Then, what more kind of catalyst do you hope to go past with this new funding?
I think we are also, if we look at Alzstatin, we are now working on an additional molecule, and we will also plan to do additional tox studies on that, which also really can help. And then on track A NAM, the same thing there. We are moving towards additional tox studies and so yeah.
Perfect. I think that's the time we had. So thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you, Fredrik. Thank you very much.